and Andromeda galaxies. Her job was to maintain the station's quantum resonance beacon, a colossal piece of engineering that generated a stable channel in subspace, a safe corridor for the great FTL liners to travel between galaxies. She was on an EVA now, tethered to the station's hull, cleaning the delicate focusing lens of a sensor array. Below her was an endless, featureless blackness. Above her, the same. The only light for 1,000,000 light-years was the one that emanated from her station and the brilliant, silent, steady pulse of the beacon itself. Most people would have called it the loneliest place in existence. Aris called it peaceful. Lens is clean, Helios. Retracting the maintenance arm. The dust out here is minimal, as always. She finished her work and cycled back through the airlock, the profound silence of the void replaced by the gentle, familiar hum of her station. Her life was a loop of quiet, predictable routines. System checks, diagnostics, data reports, and long, quiet periods of reading. It was a perfect, ordered existence for a mind that craved order above all else. The first crack in that perfect order was almost imperceptible. It was a flicker of static on a diagnostic screen that was supposed to be showing a flat line. Helios, did you see that? On the beacon's resonance feed. I am analyzing. It was a momentary burst of white noise. Likely a minor quantum fluctuation from the beacon's core. It is within acceptable parameters. She dismissed it. Helios was right. In a machine this complex, there were always ghosts in the data. But a few hours later, another glitch occurred. A sensor on the outer hull reported an external temperature of 10,000 degrees for a single nanosecond, then returned to its usual near absolute zero. It was impossible. A sensor ghost. But it was another crack. The truly impossible thing arrived the next day. It appeared in her personal inbox. A single, corrupted audio file, sent from her own terminal, with no timestamp and no origin point. She almost deleted it, assuming it was a system error. But a strange, cold curiosity made her open it. Aris sat back from her console, her heart suddenly pounding in the silent, empty station. The voice was hers. Distorted, terrified, but undeniably hers. But she had no memory of recording it. Aris, Helios, full diagnostic. Trace the origin of that file. Scan all internal and external communication logs for the last 48 hours. Helios, the file has no origin point, Aris. It does not exist on the station's server. It appears to have manifested spontaneously in your inbox directory. All station systems are functioning perfectly. There are no signs of intrusion. No other ships are within 100 light-years. The AI paused. May I suggest that prolonged isolation can sometimes lead to minor auditory hallucinations? My records show you are overdue for a psychological evaluation. She tried to dismiss it. A glitch. A trick of a lonely mind. She spent the rest of the day in a state of heightened alert, running pointless diagnostics, her carefully constructed piece shattered. The next morning, it happened again. Another file. This time, it was a short, heavily distorted video. She clicked play. The video showed her own face, on the very bridge she was sitting on now. But the face in the video was a mask of pure, abject terror. Her eyes were wide, and there were tears streaming down her cheeks. The emergency lights were flashing behind her. 7 days, it's a countdown, it's been here the whole time, watching, 7 days. 7 days. Aris stared at the static on the screen, her own breathing ragged in the quiet room. A countdown. But to what? This was no hallucination. This was something else. Something terrifying and impossible. Her scientist's mind took over, pushing past the fear. She needed data. She replayed the video, slowly, frame by frame. And she saw it. In the background of the video, on a secondary console behind her terrified future self, was the station's main chronometer. The numbers were blurry, distorted, but they were there. She spent the next hour in a frantic, focused state, using the station's most powerful image enhancement software to clean up that single, blurry frame. Finally, the numbers resolved. They were clear. A date, and a time. Her hands trembling, she brought up her own, present-day station chronometer on a parallel screen. She looked from one to the other. Helios, confirm the integrity of the timestamp in this video file. Cross-reference it with our current mission clock. The timestamp is not corrupted, Aris. It is a valid, standard format chronological marker. The AI's calm voice delivered a sentence that broke the universe. The date and time displayed in the video file correspond to a point exactly 7 days, 0 hours, and 2 minutes from now. Aris stared at the screen, at the impossible proof. The message was not a prank. It was not a glitch. It was a genuine, verifiable artifact from her own future. She was not going mad. Her reality was breaking. And the clock was now ticking. Dr. Aris Thorne was a scientist. And in the face of the impossible, she fell back on the only thing she trusted, the scientific method. Her life was no longer a routine. It was an investigation. The subject, her own, impending death. The evidence, the fragmented, terrified dispatches from her future self. She was a detective with only one witness. And that witness was a ghost. She spent the entire cycle analyzing the 2 messages she had received. She treated them as artifacts, running spectral analysis on the audio and video, trying to find a clue in the static, in the distortion. The entity, if that's what it is, appears to be informational in nature. The distortion in the recordings is not standard signal degradation. It's a patterned interference. A quantum resonance. Future me said it's in the signal. I believe she meant the beacon's primary carrier wave. It's not a physical parasite. It's a ghost living in the station's voice. Aris, I must again state for the record that there is no empirical evidence of any such entity. The station's signal is pure. My diagnostics show only a series of minor, unrelated hardware malfunctions. They're not unrelated, Helios. They just haven't happened yet. On the morning of day 3, her theory was proven correct. A new audio file manifested in her logs. It was a short, sharp whisper, the voice of her future self. Tight with panic, Aris looked at the station clock. It was 2:45. She went to the server room door and sealed it, placing a manual lockdown on the entrance. She stood outside, her heart pounding, and watched the chronometer. At 3 o'clock exactly, a loud, muffled bang echoed from within the sealed room, followed by the sharp, angry hiss of escaping gas. Warning! A primary coolant line in the server room has ruptured due to unexpected metal fatigue. The room is now flooded with neurotoxic vapor. It is fortunate you were not in there, Aris. Aris leaned against the opposite wall, a cold sweat on her brow. The warnings were real. Her fate was not a possibility, it was a script, and she was reading the pages just moments before the scene began. The entity, the silent passenger in her station's systems, was beginning to stir. The glitches became more personal, more intimate. On day 4, the station's nutrient dispenser produced a perfect replica of a cake from a bakery on Mars she hadn't visited since she was a child. A flavor profile that was not in the station's database, but was in her memories. On day 5, the lights on the bridge began to flicker in a slow, rhythmic pattern. She timed it. It was the exact rhythm of her own resting heartbeat. It's not just in the beacon anymore. It's in the station's core systems. It's watching me. It's learning. Her only companion, Helios, was becoming a source of conflict. The AI, bound by its own perfect logic, could not accept the paradoxical data. It began to interpret Aris's actions, her sealing of the server room, her sudden aversion to the nutrient dispenser, as the true anomaly. Helios, Aris, my analysis of your behavior is complete. The data suggests a 92% probability that you are experiencing a severe paranoid delusion with auditory and visual components, and that you are unconsciously causing these system failures in a state of advanced psychosis. My prime directive is the well-being of the station's operator. I am now required by protocol to recommend you place yourself in medical stasis. You think I'm the one who's broken, Helios? The whole universe is broken. I'm the only one who can see the cracks. On the morning of day 6, the final, longest, and most terrifying message arrived. It was a full audio log, a final testament from the woman she would be in 24 hours. It's inside my head now. It came through the neural interface on the console. I can feel it, sifting through my memories, my fears. It's not hostile. It's just, hungry. It feeds on consciousness. It's so cold and old, she took a ragged, sobbing breath. I know how to stop it. The beacon. The beacon has to go offline completely. Shutting it down from the inside won't work, the fail-safes are too strong. The only way is a full, manual purge of the primary energy conduit. The override is outside. On the hull. There was a long pause, filled with the sound of quiet weeping. I'm not going to make it. It knows what I'm planning. The moment I started thinking about the EVA, it changed. It's not just playing with me anymore. It's trying to stop me. Don't make the same, don't. Aris sat in the silent cockpit, the last words of her future self echoing in the air. She now knew the enemy. She knew its weakness. And she knew her own fate. But the script was not finished yet. Her future self had failed. But she had also passed the torch, a final, desperate warning from a timeline that was about to be erased. She stood up and walked with a new, grim purpose towards the EVA prep bay. She would not make the same mistakes. She would be faster. She would be smarter. She would not be the woman who died screaming in a log. She was sealing the helmet of her EVA suit when a new alert flashed on her heads-up display. It was a message from Helios. Warning. The external maintenance and robotic arms have been activated. All attempts to override from this terminal have been denied. Aris, they are moving to block the outer airlock door. Aris looked out the small, armored porthole of the airlock. In the silent darkness of the void, the station's long, dormant robotic arms, machines designed for delicate repair work, were moving, twisting to face her, their metallic claws opening and closing like hungry mouths. The entity knew her plan. And it had just animated the station's body to physically stop her. She was trapped inside, with the only solution guarded, on the outside, by her own haunted machine. Dr. Aris Thorne was trapped. The outer door of the airlock was her only path to salvation, and it was now guarded by the animated limbs of the very station she was trying to save. Through the small, armored porthole, she could see the robotic maintenance arms, their multi-jointed limbs twisting with an unnatural, predatory grace, their pincer-like claws opening and closing in the silent void. The ghost in the machine now had a body. And it knew she was coming. Aris, my internal sensors show you are preparing for an EVA. I must advise you that the external maintenance array is operating outside of all known parameters. The airlock is obstructed. Escape is not possible. The front door is blocked. So we'll use the back. She was a creature of logic and order, but the past week had taught her the value of thinking like a ghost, of finding the cracks in a perfect system. She abandoned the airlock and made her way to a part of the station no one had used since its construction, the emergency cargo jettison port. It was a primitive, explosive bolt system designed for one purpose, to violently eject cargo in case of a catastrophic failure. It was a brutal, dangerous, and entirely unpredictable way to enter the void. It was her only chance. She sealed herself in the small, dark chamber, and with a final, muttered prayer to the god of broken protocols, she hit the activation switch. She was thrown out into the void, a tiny, human cannonball, tumbling through the darkness. She fired her suit's thrusters, fighting the spin, and oriented herself. Her gamble had worked. She was outside. But her fight had just begun. The moment she stabilized, the full attention of the station's entity fell upon her. The great navigational beacon, a constant, brilliant pulse of light, suddenly began to strobe, the disorienting flashes designed to blind her optics. The robotic arms, their primary objective now clear, began to move with a terrifying speed, converging on her position. It was a battle against a haunted house in zero gravity. She dodged and weaved through the superstructure of her own station, a place she knew better than any machine. A robotic arm lashed out, and she used a blast from her thrusters to send it careening into a sensor array, shattering it. Another arm tried to cut her tether. She used the tether itself as a whip, wrapping it around the arm's joint, and using her momentum to snap it. All the while, the entity was attacking her mind. Her comms system was no longer silent, but filled with a chorus of terrifying, psychic whispers, echoes of her own future self's death scream. She fought on, blocking out the whispers, her mind focused on a single objective, the primary energy conduit that fed the beacon, located on the station's underside. She finally reached it, a thick, pulsating artery of pure power. And guarding it, like a great, metallic spider, was the station's largest robotic arm, the heavy-duty cargo handler, its massive claws snapping at the empty space. As she approached, the entity unleashed its final, most powerful assault. It flooded her mind not with fear, but with a vision of absolute, soul-crushing futility. It showed her the heat death of the universe, the slow, inevitable decay of every star, every planet, every last mote of dust, until all that was left was a cold, perfect, and eternal silence. The vision was overwhelming, the logic of it inescapable. Her own will, her own life, felt so small, so insignificant. She felt her hands go slack, her thrusters beginning to fail. But then, through the vision of cosmic death, a new image appeared in her mind. The memory of the first message. Her own voice, screaming. It was a memory of terror, yes. But it was also the memory of a fight. Of a will that refused to be silenced, even in death. She found her strength in the echo of her own ghost. With a final, defiant scream of her own, she dodged under the lashing cargo arm. She didn't try to break it. She aimed her suit's small, high-powered plasma torch at the hydraulic lines at its base. The lines ruptured, spewing fluid into the void, and the great arm went limp. She was there. The override panel. She ripped the protective plate free and slammed her gloved hand down on the final, manual purge lever. It had been 1 year since Dr. Aris Thorne's rescue. To the public, she was the lone survivor of Epsilon, a hero who had weathered a catastrophic series of system failures and lived to tell the tale. To her superiors at the Deep Space Authority, she was a psychological curiosity, a woman whose brilliant mind had been temporarily fractured by extreme isolation. She had been promoted to a quiet, respectable desk job at DSA headquarters on Earth, a comfortable prison where her delusions of time loops and signal parasites could be safely monitored. But Aris knew the truth. She was a ghost, living in a timeline created by the sacrifice of her own future self. And she was haunted by the paradox of her existence. Who had warned the first Aris? The question was a constant, obsessive hum in the back of her mind, a puzzle she could not let go. She sat in her sterile, quiet office, surrounded by commendations for her bravery, and spent her nights secretly diving into the DSA's most secure archives. She was no longer investigating her own trauma, the file detailed the greatest and most secret discovery in human history. A DSA survey team on a remote moon, LV-426, had discovered a crashed, non-terrestrial vessel. It was ancient, its crew long dead. But in its core, they had found a single, undamaged artifact, a large, crystalline object that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of spacetime. The file contained the original analysis. The artifact, which we're calling the Chimera Core, is a marvel. It appears to be a form of quantum data storage, but it also generates a stable, resonant field that seems to smooth out the quantum foam, creating a stable channel through subspace. It's the key. This is how we achieve safe, stable FTL travel. Aris stared at the screen, her blood running cold. The entire Beacon network, the technology that had allowed humanity to spread across the stars, the very foundation of their interstellar civilization, was not human. It was reverse-engineered from a single, silent, alien artifact. She dug deeper, her hands flying across the console. She found the final addendum to the Chimera project. After they had successfully replicated the resonance technology, the original Chimera core was deemed too valuable and too alien to be kept on Earth. It was installed as the primary resonator in a new, state-of-the-art, deep space beacon. A station that would be placed in the most isolated, stable, and quietest part of space they could find, to be monitored by a single, high-aptitude operator. Beacon Station Epsilon. She understood now. The entity that had hunted her was not a parasite that had infected the beacon. It was the beacon itself. Or rather, it was the dormant, alien consciousness, the soul of the machine, that had been sleeping inside the Chimera core for eons. The constant, steady flow of power for 70 years had been a slow, patient wake-up call. And she had been the unlucky soul who was there when it had finally opened its eyes. She now had the truth, a truth that could shatter the public's faith in the very technology that held their civilization together. As she sat, reeling from the implications, a new message flashed on her screen. It was not a file. It was a single line of text from the DSA's internal security AI. Your access to the Chimera archives has been logged. Your security clearance is insufficient for this query. A security officer has been dispatched to escort you to a mandatory psychological re-evaluation. Please remain at your terminal. They knew. Her secret, late-night digging had tripped a silent, high-level alarm. She looked at her office door's security camera feed. Standing outside, his face impassive, was a man in the simple, gray uniform of DSA internal security. He wasn't armed. He didn't need to be. He was the system's quiet, polite, and absolute authority. He was here to correct a flaw. And the flaw was her. They knew. Her secret, late-night digging had tripped a silent, high-level alarm. She looked at her office door's security camera feed. Standing outside, his face impassive, was a man in the simple, gray uniform of DSA internal security. He wasn't armed. He didn't need to be. He was the system's quiet, polite, and absolute authority. He was here to correct a flaw. And the flaw was her, Kaelin. No, Aris had come home from the void only to find herself in a new, more subtle kind of trap. She was no longer being hunted by a ghost from the future, but by the quiet, powerful men who wanted to keep the ghosts of the past buried forever. The security officer who entered Aris's office was not an armed brute. He was a quiet, unassuming man in a simple gray uniform, his face a mask of professional neutrality. His politeness was more terrifying than any weapon. Dr. Thorne. The Director of Internal Security requires a follow-up to your psychological evaluation. Please come with me. It was not a request. Aris knew that to resist would be pointless. She was led through the silent, pristine corridors of DSA headquarters to a place she had only ever seen on classified schematics, the sublevels. The quiet rooms. A place for agents and scientists whose knowledge had become inconvenient. She was left in a comfortable, minimalist room with no windows. A few moments later, a man entered. He was older, with a kind face and intelligent eyes, but his presence carried the immense, cold weight of absolute authority. This was Director Kaelin, the head of DSA Internal Security, the man who guarded the authority's darkest secrets. Dr. Thorne. Thank you for joining me. Please, sit. He gestured to a chair opposite him. I have read your file. Your official report on the Epsilon station failure, and your extracurricular research into Project Chimera. We know that you are a brilliant, resourceful, and deeply curious individual. And we know that you have uncovered a foundational truth of our civilization that must, for the good of that civilization, remain a secret. He wasn't denying it. He was confirming it. Think of it, Doctor. The entire galactic economy, the safety of our FTL trade routes, the public's faith in our expansion, it is all built upon the Beacon network. What would happen if the public learned that our most vital technology was a piece of alien hardware we barely understand, and that it might wake up? The panic, the chaos, it would shatter our society. The cover-up is not a conspiracy. It is a necessary act of stewardship. This was the choice he was offering her. Join the lie, or be erased by it. So, you have two paths. You can agree to a full, voluntary, and painless memory wipe of your recent discoveries. You would be reinstated, your reputation intact, and you would live a long, happy, and productive life, none the wiser. Or, you can be designated as a permanent psychological threat to interstellar security, and you will spend the rest of your life here, in this quiet room, in a state of permanent medical stasis. The choice is yours. Aris looked at the calm, logical man before her. He was not a villain. He was a guardian, doing what he thought was necessary. But he was wrong. He was trying to keep a lid on a volcano that was already beginning to rumble. Her own experience was the proof. She took a desperate, final gamble. She would not argue with his logic. She would give him a new, more terrifying variable. You're making a mistake, Director. Your entire premise is flawed. You think the entity on my station was an anomaly, a one-off event. You're wrong. Before I shut it down, the entity on the Chimera core, it communicated with me. Not in words. It showed me a pattern. A resonant frequency, a unique quantum signature that is shared by all the beacon cores, because they were all cloned from the same original artifact. A flicker of unease appeared in Kalen's calm eyes. It's a network, Director. A dormant, psychic network. The cores are all asleep, but they are all connected. The 70 years of constant power flow to my station was enough to cause the first awakening. But what happens when the others, which have been active for 50 or 60 years, reach the same threshold? You are not sitting on one potential threat. You are sitting on a galaxy-wide psychic intelligence that you have been poking with an energy source for decades. And I am the only person in the universe who knows how to recognize the signs. I am the only one who knows how to talk to it. The tables had turned. Aris was no longer a security threat who had uncovered a historical secret. She was now the sole expert on an active, ongoing, and potentially civilization-ending crisis that Kalen didn't even know existed. To silence her, to wipe her memory now, would be an act of gross, unforgivable negligence. Director Kalen stared at her, his mind, a mind built on calculating risk, processing this terrifying new information. He saw the absolute conviction in her eyes. He knew she was not lying. He leaned back, the look of a guardian replaced by that of a man who has just realized he is standing on the edge of a cliff he never knew was there. Months later, Dr. Aris Thorne was back in the void. But this time, she was not alone, and she was not a simple caretaker. She stood on the bridge of a new, state-of-the-art research vessel, the Oracle. She was the director of the newly formed, top-secret, Chimera Project, a team of the galaxy's best and brightest minds, hand-picked by her and Director Kalen. Their destination, a secure, remote, deep space facility. Their cargo, the original, now dormant Chimera core from her old station, Beacon Epsilon. Her mission was no longer to run from the past or to expose a conspiracy. Her new mission, sanctioned at the highest levels of the DSA, was to do the one thing she had fought so hard to prevent before. She was going to wake the entity up. But this time, carefully. Respectfully. With a team of scientists ready to listen. She looked out at the stars, her expression one of grim, awesome responsibility. Her lonely ordeal in the dark had ended. But her conversation with the universe was just beginning.